She had everything: the promotion, the apartment, the relationship everyone envied. And every Sunday night she sat on her bathroom floor, chest tight, wondering why she still felt completely empty. Sound familiar? That feeling has a name. Buddhism identified it over 2,500 years ago. And more importantly, it mapped the exact way out. Her name was Priya, 34, senior consultant at a firm she'd spent a decade trying to get into. She meditated occasionally, read self-help books on flights, did everything right, but the anxiety kept coming back. Like a tide she couldn't outrun. She thought something was broken in her. Buddhism would say, nothing is broken, you just haven't seen clearly yet. Around 500 BCE, a man who had also tried everything, wealth, asceticism, pleasure, deprivation, sat beneath a fig tree and refused to move until he understood the root of human suffering. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. What he discovered that night wasn't religious dogma, it was a diagnosis. 4 truths, precise, compassionate, and shockingly relevant to your Monday morning. These 4 insights became known as the 4 Noble Truths. They aren't commandments. They aren't beliefs you have to adopt. Think of them more like a doctor's process. First, acknowledge the symptom, then find the cause, then confirm a cure exists, then follow the treatment. That's it. That's the entire framework. Simple to explain, profound to live. The first noble truth is called dukkha, often translated as suffering. But that word doesn't quite hold it. Dukkha is closer to unsatisfactoriness, that low-grade restlessness you feel even when things are fine. The way a good meal ends, the way a holiday fades, the way you get what you wanted and immediately start wanting something else. That's dukkha. It's the texture of unexamined human life. Priya knew this feeling well. She called it her Sunday dread. But it wasn't just Sundays. It was the gap between finishing one goal and starting the next. The hollow moment after the applause, the quiet after the celebration. Buddhism doesn't say this makes you weak or broken. It says this is the universal human condition. Every single person on this planet knows dukkha. You are not alone in this. There are 3 layers to dukkha. The first is obvious pain, loss, illness, grief. The second is the suffering of change, the beautiful things that don't last. The third is the most subtle and the most overlooked. It's the suffering that comes from clinging to a self that keeps changing. The exhaustion of maintaining a version of you that the world can approve of. That third layer? That's where most modern anxiety lives. So why does Buddhism start with suffering? Isn't that pessimistic? Actually, it's the opposite. A doctor who refuses to name your illness isn't kind, they're negligent. The Buddha wasn't being dark, he was being honest. And there's something quietly relieving about someone finally saying, yes, this is real, this is hard, and you're not imagining it. The first truth is an act of compassion. Priya found her first real exhale reading about dukkha, not because suffering is comforting, but because for the first time, she stopped blaming herself for feeling it. She wasn't defective. She wasn't ungrateful. She was human, and Buddhism had been waiting patiently for her to arrive at that exact realization before showing her the next step. The second noble truth is called samudaya, the origin of suffering. And here is where Buddhism becomes genuinely radical. It doesn't blame the world for your pain. It points directly at one thing, tanha, craving, the relentless thirst for things to be different from how they are. For more pleasure, for less pain, for a permanent version of a temporary world. Notice what Buddhism is not saying. It's not saying desire is evil. It's not saying you shouldn't want good things. It's pointing at a specific kind of wanting. The kind that says, I cannot be okay unless this changes. The kind that turns preferences into demands. The clench beneath ambition. The anxiety beneath achievement, that urgent, contracted feeling that something is always missing. Tanha has 3 flavors: craving for sensory pleasure, the next hit, the next high, the next scroll. Tanha has 3 flavors: craving for sensory pleasure, the next hit, the next high, the next scroll. Craving for existence, the desperate need to become something, to be seen as worthy, significant. And craving for non-existence, the exhausted wish to disappear, to feel nothing, to escape. Look at your stress today. It almost certainly traces back to one of these 3, usually the second one. For Priya, it was the second one, craving for existence. She needed to be seen as competent, as someone who had it together. Every email sent with a slightly held breath, Every meeting measured against an invisible score. She wasn't suffering because her life was bad. She was suffering because she was gripping it so tightly, terrified of what would happen if she ever let go. And here's the thing about craving, it masquerades as motivation. It looks like drive, it sounds like ambition. But there's a difference between moving towards something with openness and running away from emptiness with urgency. One feels expansive, the other feels like a chase with no finish line. Most of modern hustle culture is built entirely on the second. Buddhism just quietly names it. The third noble truth is called Nirodha, the cessation of suffering, and this is where skeptics raise an eyebrow. Buddhism is saying suffering can end. Not that life will stop being hard, not that loss won't happen, but that the additional layer of anguish we add through craving and resistance, that specific suffering, can actually cease. This is the truth most people never let themselves reach. Nirodha points to a state called nirvana, which has been wildly misrepresented in Western culture. Nirvana isn't a floating bliss state. It's not disappearing into nothingness. The word literally means extinguishing, like a flame going out, the extinguishing of craving, the relief of finally putting down the weight you forgot you were carrying. It's less like ecstasy and more like the deepest exhale of your life. You've tasted Nirodha. You have. Remember a moment when you were so fully present that you forgot to be anxious? When you were laughing hard with someone you love and for that moment nothing was missing? That gap between craving and the next craving, that brief open space, that's a glimpse of what Buddhism is pointing at. Not as an occasional accident, but as a way of being. Priya had one of those moments on a random Tuesday. She was making tea, no podcast, no planning, just the sound of water. The warmth of the mug. And for about 40 seconds, she felt completely fine. Not because anything had changed, but because for once, she hadn't been craving anything different. She laughed at herself afterward. Buddhism had found her in her kitchen. The fourth noble truth is called Magga, the path. And this is where Buddhism becomes practical. Not just a philosophy you read about, but a way of living you can actually begin today. The Buddha laid it out as the Eightfold Path. 8 dimensions of how you see, think, speak, act, work, try, focus, and concentrate. Together they form the middle way, between extreme indulgence and harsh self-denial. You don't have to master all 8 at once. Think of them as directions, not destinations. Right view, seeing reality clearly, without the distortion of craving. Right intention, acting from compassion rather than fear. Right speech, using words that don't create more suffering. Right action, making choices aligned with your values. Each one is a small daily practice, not perfection, direction. Buddhism isn't about becoming someone else. It's about finally coming home to yourself. The path is open. All you have to do is take the first step.